If you're leaving the stage with applause when you're speaking, but no clients, your talk is likely missing one of 7 steps. They're not difficult, but I run into a lot of people who don't have this simple framework set up. And so they leave disappointed and kind of want to cry at the back of the room. If that's you. Stay tuned. We're going to dive into the 7-step framework today, and you will never again leave without having sales. So, well, if you're new here, welcome to the Marketing Menagerie. I'm Alisa Conner, and I help you connect the dots between your marketing so that the marketing you're already investing in, so that you are making the most out of your return on investment and seeing more sales. Pretty simple. We want you to make more money. So most of my clients see about a 60% increase within 6 months of working together because we focus on fewer, smarter tactics and actually measure what we're doing. So chances are, if you're speaking on stage, you already have a pretty good tactic in your wheelhouse. There are a couple of things that could run amok here if you are speaking on stages. The biggest one is making sure that you're speaking on the right stages. And this is something that I run into with clients at all levels. Like a lot of times they will just jump on a stage to get in front of people, only to realize that the people that they want to work with aren't there. And then they leave disappointed because no one wants to work with them because they're not the right people. And so when you're looking to get on a stage, you want to make sure that you're choosing wisely to spend your time, money, and energy on a stage, because if you're just jumping on a stage and it doesn't connect to your offer, once again, you're spending a lot of resources for no return on investment. So let's dive into the framework. That was just a little bonus. I'm giving you the bonus early today. But that's a bonus tip. Like, make sure you're speaking on the right stages, because if you're not, it's futile. You're spinning your wheels for something that's never going to lead anywhere. So let's dive into the 7-step framework. And these are steps that you should be really incorporating into all of your marketing. And so, yes, it's important to have it on the stage. A lot of times what I will find with people that speak on stages is that they develop their talk without thinking through how that talk is leading people further down the relationship building to want to purchase from them. And I'm not saying you can't have a really interesting talk and a creative way of getting there, but if you aren't leading people down the path in a way that encourages them to purchase, you probably need to rethink your talk. No offense. Sorry if you paid a speaking coach a lot of money to create a talk for you, but if it isn't leading people to purchase from you and your goal is lead generation from that stage, you need to rethink about how you're moving, how you're going about that. So if we're looking at the 7-step framework, the 7 steps, just really quickly, are promise, story, problem, proof, seeding your offer, next step, and follow-up. Now, those seem like that's a lot, but when we dive into each of those, we're going to have examples as we go. You're going to see that a lot of these you probably already have created, and we just need to make sure that they are woven into the framework of your presentation. And so let's start with a promise. So a promise is really the guarantee that you're giving people for not only what they're going to get out of the presentation, but ultimately what you're going to help them do in the long run. And so if there's nothing in the presentation, like there's no way, whatever you're talking about is of interest to them, like there's no skin in the game, they're going to check out. It's going to be like snack snooze time. Like they're not going to pay attention. How many times have you been to, like when I was in corporate, we always had to go to these events, and there were people that would get up and speak about different things. Like, and some of it was so irrelevant to my job that, yeah, it was just like time to pass notes with your friend that you're at the conference with. And so you have to make that connection right away with your audience, because if you aren't, then they're going to check out. They're not going to listen to your presentation. And so a great example of this is if I'm speaking in front of somebody, and like one of my talks is about building relationships outside of technology. Like what it comes down to is what we used to do is really what's required and becoming more required as we move into the digital age, because people still do business with people. And so if I were to stand up and give my talk, one of the first things I would say is that I'm going to make sure that you increase your stage conversions by 30% before you leave the room. And most people would be like, what? 30%? That's pretty big. Yeah. And most of the time that comes from them not doing anything really extravagantly different. So creating that promise, like it tunes people in like, oh, well, I want to pay attention because I want that thing. And so when you're thinking about the promise you're going to give people, you need to make sure that it's something that's applicable to the audience. Another reason to be really, really important for you to be in front of the right audience, but also because it's going to grab their attention. So it works very much like a hook. If you're creating a video or a social media post or something like that, you want to hook them in right away. So the second step of this process is story. And as we know, stories connect people because people are emotional and they connect on emotional levels. Most purchases come from emotional buy-in. And if you don't have that emotional connection for somebody, you don't build that into how you're doing business, you're not going to have as high of conversions because people truly do make emotional buying decisions, probably more than factual buying decisions, but they definitely both play a part. So most often when I talk about telling stories, people kind of clam up a little bit. They get a little freaked out. They're like, I don't know any stories. I can't tell stories. I don't have any stories. But in reality, we all have stories. Like you probably, if you commuted into work this morning, you probably have a story about the commute that you just think is boring and nobody would want to hear it. Most often, if you're going to add a story into a talk that you're giving, you're going to want to think back about the people that you've helped and stories of your clients, because though it's so much easier to talk about someone else's story, especially if you've played a part in their success, than it is to just come up with a random story. Now, of course, if you have a very interesting story about how you built your business and things like that, by all means, add that in. If you can somehow relate it to the pain or the promise that you just delivered, by all means, go to town, tell a great story. But if you can't come up with a story or you struggle with storytelling, think about looking at it from the perspective of the people that you've already worked with or people that you've helped, or specifically something that has to do with your experience of what you do. So I have an example. So last summer I went to this conference, and it was a very interesting conference. I'll just put it that way. And I was there and I happened to make friends. I always make friends when I go. And we were outside and we had just left a presentation, and this poor woman, I just feel so bad for her still. It was right after a regular presenter, and she got invited up on the stage and by the founder. It wasn't the coordinator, but the person that was putting on the event. And it was introduced as his friend. And there was like a big spiel that nobody paid attention to because it was all about their friendship. And everybody's like, whatever, it doesn't really relate to me. So this poor woman stands up on stage for 15 minutes and she talks about herself and about what she does and what her experience was. And then she tries to pitch this $3,000 product. And like people checked out after 5 minutes. They're like, okay, we don't know who you are. We don't know why you're here. It was so confusing. We don't care what you're selling. We're going to go to the bathroom. We're going to go get lunch. We're going to get in line for lunch. We're going to go get the massage they promised us down the hall, like whatever it was. But this poor woman just stood up there and like half the room left by the time she walked off the stage. And I just felt horrible for her. But she approached it all wrong. Like some of it lies on her and a lot of it lies on the people that were putting the event together, because we didn't know this person from Adam and she just got thrown up there. And then she tried to sell people a really high ticket offer without going through any of the buying stages. And I see this so often. Like there's so many people that try to pitch these huge packages because they think they're Tony Robbins, for example. I'm like, you don't have the brand or any of the authority built that Tony has for his brand. So you're going to really struggle trying to sell that from stage, especially if you're walking into an audience where people don't know you, because there are stages for buying, and that kind of relationship is not built in 15 minutes, half an hour, or an hour. It takes time. And so, especially for higher end products. So don't be like that poor lady. That's really the moral of the story. But you see how I wove that? Like that was just a random thing that happened that I can relate to business. So think about how you're going to roll that story, whatever story it is, into your talk so that it leads people further down the path. Step 3 is the problem. You need to name their problem as though you are intimately connected to that problem and you understand it from a perspective that even they don't understand it because you're looking at it from the outside in. This is the number one game changer for people to want to move forward in any type of funnel with you, is that if they feel like you understand their problem better than they do, that builds immediately trust and authority with you to them. And that doesn't mean they're ready to buy your product, but it does mean that they're willing to give you a shot and to learn more about you and see if you actually can deliver on what you have shown them that you understand. And so when you start having, being able to identify the problem for the specific people that you help, again, getting really specific, the more your conversion rate is going to increase. Because rather than talking about, hey, I help manufacturing companies of all sizes and all types make things better. No. Like, what? What does that even mean? Whereas we can say, I help car manufacturers come in and fix this specific part of their process so that it saves them billions of dollars a year. Those car manufacturers are like, sign me up. Like, what do I need to do? It's very specific. And the more specific you can get with the problems that you solve, and the more you can talk about how that works, the more traction you're going to get. Which leads us right into step number 4, which is proof. When you deliver those results and you can show an example of how you've done that for someone else, that not only builds authority, it builds respect. Because you have now shown that it's not just you talking, tooting your own horn, but you've helped all of these people with this thing. And so, for example, I have a client that I worked with. I still kind of work with her, but that I worked with that delivered live training in the world of the veterinary space. And it was specific training for communication in their front office, because they were having most veterinary offices struggle with their front office being effective and with those people knowing how to have conversations with the owners of their pets. And so she built this great training business that she's been, I don't even know how long she's been doing it now, probably 15 years, 20 years, a long time. Anyway, long story short is that she would go give these presentations at these big conferences for veterinary offices and for their staff. And it never occurred to her that she should be moving people into some sort of funnel outside of going to the back of the room and selling her book. And so when I looked at her business, I was like, holy crap, lady, like you are leaving so much money on the table. The table's going to break in half because you're leaving so much money on there. And so when we worked together, we created a funnel outside of people purchasing at the back of the room, because most of the time, if you're moving to the back of the room and you might have a few things that are for sale, lower price offers, books, depending on how well known you are in the industry, you might be selling your coaching packages or your training packages or whatever that might be. But I think the latest statistic I read was 90% of people are rushing past you to get a snack, to get water, go to the bathroom, to meet friends, to whatever it is. And you're losing all of those people because you didn't give them an opportunity for them to get to know you better. Which leads us right into step number 5. which is you need to seed your offer. So this is what I do, and this is how you get started with me. And it's never like buy my stuff. I hate to say that, but 9 out of 10 times, probably 9.5 out of 10 times, it's never, here's what I sell, buy it. It is instead like, here's the next step. And so, for example, like one of the things that I've created for people that are speaking is a checklist of all the things you need to do before you get on stage. So before stage, on stage, and after stage. And if you want that, I'm going to pin it below. I have the lead magnet created and I will put it in the comments and pin it below so you can go grab it. But it is 7 ways. I think I don't know if it's 7. It might be more than that. I might have had to rename it to, anyway, Amplify Your Leads from every speaking engagement. But it's that. It's whatever it is, the next thing that moves them to the next thing, that moves them to the next thing. And so if you don't have that built into your presentation and you're just like, hey, I'll send you my slides, and then you email it to them, or you just put a link up to your Google Drive, how are you following up with them? You can't. You don't have any information. And so you've got to have that prepared ahead of time. You have to have a way for them to move forward, which leads us right into number 6, which is what's the next step? What do they need to do? Is it scan a QR code? Is it give you their email address? Is it visit your URL? Is it whatever it is? I would beg and plead that it's something electronic because nobody has time to sit there and type forms into the computer anymore. But whatever that is, you need to remind them like how they get that resource, whatever it was that you just talked about, and make it as easy as possible, which usually means giving them 2 or 3 options to do that. And then once they take that next step, bump, 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 it's back in your court. Because where most sales fall apart is in the follow-up. People think, oh, I can follow up once. The latest statistic is that you need to follow up a minimum of 11 times with people. Because if you opened your email inbox today, you're probably like, yeah, I had like 72 emails overnight. Yeah, you and the rest of the world. And so if you are wanting to stay in front of people, you need to be specific. You need to stay in front of them. And really, if you're looking at this 7-11-4 principle, which I don't want to dive into too much here, but Google did a study and it takes a minimum of 7 times of getting in front of people in 4 different locations before they pay attention to you, and then 11 times following up once they do. And so if you're not thinking through those things as you're stepping on that stage, then I want you to run, not walk, run, and get the 7-step checklist that I created that's in the comments, because it's going to help you be prepared for your next presentation and increase your conversions. And so let's just recap those really quick so you have them. First is the promise. The second was the story, telling a story to create some emotional connection. The third is identifying their problem really specifically. So much so that they're like, whoa, they know more about this than I do. Next piece is proof that you know how to solve that problem. Last is like seeding the offer. Like, how are they going to get started with you? And then the next step, like, what does that look like? How do they actually do that? And so it's in the instructions on seeding the offer. Like if you're giving them a checklist, you got to tell them, go get it here. Scan the geek, whatever that is. And then the last part is follow-up. And I will do a whole series probably on follow-up because that's where a lot of people get lost. They don't know what to say. They stop sending emails too soon. They want people to buy really quickly, and that's not always the case. So anyway, if this was valuable to you, I would love for you to hit subscribe. There's going to be more videos that are similar to this in the very near future. And I would love for you to share it with a friend. If it was valuable to you, perhaps they'll find value in it too. And don't forget to grab the checklist below so that you are prepared and ready to increase your conversions from your next speaking engagement before you step on the stage. Take care.